Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
France have joined the Netherlands and Argentina in the knockout stages, courtesy of an efficient win thanks to Giroud and an Mbappe double, while Lewandowski scored the consolation for Poland. The XG was fairly even, as all three of France's goals were great finishes, and the Poland penalty accounts for almost half their XG. But what tactics did we see from France in particular? And how did these tactics allow Mbappe to be in full force? Let's take a look. And we'll begin with France in possession. And for the most part, Poland defended in a 4-1-4-1 or a 4-5-1. And initially they were quite aggressive in the press, but as the game settled, they sat off of France a lot more. France started off with fairly low fullbacks in the first phase. And this is because if the fullback received and the winger looked to press, there would now be the opportunity for a potential 1 versus 1. And both of France's wingers are particularly effective in these situations. So this is part of the reason why we saw Poland begin to drop a lot deeper as the game went on. And in the general build-up phase, Tchouaméni had the responsibility of being the deepest pivot, whilst Rabiot and Griezmann would operate more as free eights, usually looking to push up into the half spaces, with either being happy to drop in to be a second option when needed, although Griezmann had a little more freedom to drift around the pitch. And by default, the midfield of these two nations were 3 versus 3. And as discussed, Poland did look to be active in defense when possible. So in these situations when Tchouaméni would receive deep, he wouldn't have all the space to play up, as one of the Polish midfielders would be quick to look to close him down whenever possible. So this made central progression a bit trickier for France, but France didn't mind this too much, as their strengths were definitely in the wide regions. And high up, again Tchouaméni was the central hub, with Griezmann and Rabiot dropping deep when needed. But the fullbacks operated in slightly different ways. Hernandez right from the off had a lot more responsibility to push higher up the pitch, whilst Koundé tended to stay slightly deeper and more central in these positions alongside Tchouaméni. And we can see the difference in their positioning in the heat maps. And an advantage of this positioning of Koundé is when he received the ball, either a midfielder, potentially freeing Griezmann in these regions, or more likely the winger would be drawn towards him to close him down. And this would then allow Dembélé to receive and be in a 1 versus 1 situation, to potentially take on his man. But unlike Mbappe on the far side, who we will get to, Dembélé didn't have as much success taking on his man. But he still found ways to be effective. And this is because when he received in the deeper region, his fullback was aggressive in looking to close him down as soon as possible. And this would create space between the centre-back, who tended to be tucked in, and the fullback, and either Griezmann or even Koundé, particularly in the second half when he was more offensive, could look to make runs into these regions to receive and then look to cross. So here, Hernandez is much higher and wider, whilst Koundé is in a more central position. So when he does receive, Dembélé out wide means that the fullback is reluctant to go and press Koundé down. So there's a lot more room. And in other scenarios in this game, we saw the likes of Griezmann looking to make the run into that space, to then create the potential for the pass, but that doesn't occur in this particular case. But the left hand side is where France were much more dominant. And down this flank, Hernandez and Mbappe operated in relation to one another, never looking to occupy the same vertical zone. So if Mbappe was central, Hernandez would be wide, and vice versa, as this would help to create passing lanes. And early in the game, Mbappe was used much more as a creator rather than a goal threat, so he tended to stay wide. And this still allowed France to utilize his 1 versus 1 ability, as no matter the situation he received the ball in, he could just use his sheer pace to look to attack the byline past Cash and get dangerous crosses in for the likes of Giroud to look to attack. And naturally, Poland would at times look to double up on him, but Rabiot was positionally fluid, so he often drifted to the left-hand side to look to create a wide triangle with Hernandez and Mbappe, so that they had somewhat of a 3 versus 2. So that if they had quick interchanges of passes, with Cash potentially being drawn central, then there was the potential for combination play leading to opportunities. Poland have 2 men defending wide, and Rabiot has also pushed wide to help him create a 3. And with Cash drawn onto Mbappe, Rabiot actually had space to attack in the fullback region but is not found. And running on the play, we again see that wide triangle has the potential to cause overloads if Griezmann had been able to find the pass. As the game matured, Deschamps altered the shape of France in order to get Mbappe into even more effective positions. And in settled possession, we began to see Hernandez be the man out wide, allowing Mbappe to come more central, and Rabiot could drop deeper when needed, but could also just be the extra man in the midfield, between the lines if they were really looking to overload Poland. And when he did push high, the centre-backs then had more space if the midfielder was looking to pick up one of these men. But if he pushed up, then passing angles opened up between the lines. And generally, by operating in more central positions, he was much closer to Giroud in dangerous positions, allowing him to use his passing range to find him in dangerous positions, or even the overlapping Hernandez. But at the same time, with his amazing acceleration, he could look for the 1-2 when possible. And the first goal shows shades of this. Rabiot is high, tying up a midfielder, so now Upamecano has more room in which to operate in. Hernandez is also wide, allowing Mbappe into central regions, so he can receive the ball, and Cash then looks to press him, creating the first gap in the defense, whilst Glick is just poorly positioned. So Mbappe finds Giroud, and he had actually been going for the 1-2, but Giroud's able to find the finish. But even France's defensive shape was designed to bring out the most of Mbappe, so let's look at Poland in possession. France tended to defend in a lopsided 4-4-2, with Giroud high, and Mbappe looking to join him but staying wide, and Griezmann could initially be in the attacking midfield position, with Rabiot central left. However, France were quite passive off the ball for the most part, and Giroud wasn't looking to press the centre-backs, and could instead sit on Krychowiak, who was often the deepest midfielder, and this would allow Griezmann to drop in as a more traditional 8, meaning that Rabiot could now operate slightly wider. But Giroud was still the press trigger, as when he did look to move onto a centre-back, the rest of the side was expected to back up this press. So France are lined up in their 4-4-2, with Rabiot being central but left, whilst Mbappe and Giroud are up top, and as you can see, Giroud is looking to tie up Krychowiak. And now Giroud initiates the press, so the rest of the midfield pushes up. And the fullbacks are fairly crucial to the Polish attack, so we would at times see Szymanski drop deeper to the left-hand side, allowing his fullback to push much higher up, whilst Frankowski would then look to operate in more central positions. But the right-hand side of Poland's defense was the most crucial region. Mbappe, staying so high and wide, was actually doing a good defensive job, as Cash was frightened for the most part, especially when the game was level, to push high up early due to the potential of that transition. So, for as long as he could, he preferred to stay deep. But when Poland did go behind, now Cash was forced to look to attack higher up much earlier during the build-up play. And Mbappe's positioning wasn't always perfect, as at times he could cut off that passing lane effectively, but Poland also saw success when they did find Cash, as now Hernandez would be 2 versus 1 down, as it could take Rabiot a while to come across to cover. Mbappe is high again, but as the ball has been worked through the midfield, Cash has moved high up and can easily receive the ball. So with Rabiot initially being central, Hernandez was temporarily 2 versus 1 down, although Rabiot does a good job in tracking Cash when he does receive the ball. But now when Cash was in these higher positions, when the ball did break down, the danger was obvious. So often Mbappe was the target, and he would be up against an aging Glick in 1 versus 1 situations, and got into many dangerous zones, but usually the pass was just too heavy. But this does still play a part in the second goal. Cash is high during this attack, so when the ball breaks down, both Mbappe and Dembele are in dangerous zones, with Glick having the role of watching Mbappe. So with Cash still high, Dembele can find Mbappe, who produces an outstanding finish. Overall, France were comfortable throughout the 90, not having to be anywhere near their best and still winning at a canter. This is part of the reason they're one of the favourites, so Poland shouldn't be too disappointed. For the managerial tactical scores, Deschamps earns an 8 for a solid plan with the right amount of risk that paid off completely, while Michnevis earns a 5. But how far will France go? Drop it down below.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out.
And a special thanks to my latest patrons, like RE.
But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.